For this week's grammar review, we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of giving you practice sets and a great start about a different punctuation mark or grammar skill, I decided that I wanted to review the quiz from last week because, as you know, the scores were pretty dismal. These are the results from Spiral Grammar Quiz number 4. Because the scores were so dismal, what we're going to do is we're going to go over each of the 5 questions, and there will be questions in the middle of the video to have you go back and re-answer those questions. And then you will get a daily grade for completing this assignment and participating in the video. And then at the end of this week on Friday, you will have another quiz that is very, very similar to this one. It will have a slightly different passage, but it will have some of the same skills that we're going to talk about in this video. Okay, let's start with question 1. Question 1 says, which change, if any, is needed to revise the underlined text? And the underlined text is from paragraph 1. It is so important to always read the full context of the entire sentence in the passage, whether you're looking at benchmark, EOC, or ACT, context always matters. So what you have in this sentence is lives, semicolon, and how. So I imagine that most of you noticed that you can't do a semicolon and a fanboy together. However, a lot of people selected the wrong answer choice because they did not read the entire sentence. So if you look at the entire sentence, it says the trilogy reveals how fate controls human lives and how people's attempts to avoid fate can often lead them directly to it. So what you have to think about is this sentence composed of 2 independent clauses that should be joined with a comma and a conjunction? Or is something else happening here? And what's happening here is this second part of the sentence is actually not an independent clause. It's not a complete sentence. How people's attempts to avoid fate can often lead them directly to it is not a complete thought. Therefore, you would not put a comma and a fanboy there. You would also not put a semicolon. You also would not put a colon there. What is happening here is these are 2 dependent clauses that are following a verb. So you don't need any punctuation with the and. Read the entire sentence. Okay, question number 2. This one has Oedipus Rex, Oedipus the King of Thebes. So I go back and look at the sentences in the paragraphs and read the full sentence to get the context and see how these words are functioning so I know what I need to do. It says, in Oedipus Rex, Oedipus the King of Thebes tries to avoid the prophecy that he will kill his father and marry his mother. So when I look at this full sentence, I see that in Oedipus Rex is an introductory phrase. If you remember your comma rules, you know you need a comma after introductory phrases, so a comma would need to go here. Then you have Oedipus, the King of Thebes, tries. So Oedipus is the subject of the sentence, tries is the verb. The King of Thebes then is an interrupter. It's actually in a positive. Commas go before and after appositives. So the correct answer to this question actually does have a lot of commas in it. Oedipus Rex, comma, Oedipus, comma, the King of Thebes, comma. Okay, question 3. The underlined portion says redemption, Oedipus, who was once a cursed man. So I'm going to go back and read the full sentence for context. It says, this play explores redemption. Oedipus, who was once a cursed man, finds peace in his suffering. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to look at is what's going on here with redemption. I need to look and see if this colon is appropriate here, and there are 2 things that I can use a colon for. One is to introduce a list, which is not what's happening here. The other is to separate independent clauses. This is an independent clause, this first part, so that would work. Now, is the second part of the sentence an independent clause? Oedipus, who was once a cursed man, finds peace in his suffering. Yes. So the colon actually is appropriate there, which would mean I could use this first option with the colon. I could use the second option with the semicolon, or I could use no change because it has a colon here. I can't use the comma option because I have two independent clauses and I can't separate them with just a comma, or that's a comma splice. So now I need to figure out what I need to do after the word Oedipus. So it says, Oedipus, who was once a cursed man, finds peace in his suffering. Well, if I look carefully at this independent clause, Oedipus is the subject, finds is the main verb, who was once a cursed man is an interrupter. Around interrupters, what do? We put commas around them. There's only one option that puts a comma around the interrupter before and after it, and the appropriate punctuation mark before the second independent clause. Okay, next question. We have duties, colon, loyalty to family, comma, and obeying. So look at the entire context of the sentence. It says the play examines conflicting duties, loyalty to family, and obeying the state. First thing I need to check is this colon correct? The only other option I'm given is a comma here. So I've got to figure out, do I need a colon or do I need a comma? Well, it seems like what's happening here is I have an independent clause and then I have a couple of items that are listed that explain the first element. So the colon is actually okay here. So I'm going to ignore this option right here. Now I'm going to move on to the second issue in the sentence, which is the loyalty to family and obeying the state. Those are two items. It's items in a series, but it's only two. And because there are only two, I don't actually need the comma when there are two items. You just need the conjunction. So I actually need to remove this comma here. If it said loyalty to family, obeying the state, and having personal pride, then you would use commas to separate them because there were three items. But since there are only two, you don't actually need this comma. So you might have chosen this option right here, loyalty to family and obeying the state, because it removed the comma. Even though it put a comma here, that would be wrong. However, the problem with that is that obeying is not parallel to loyalty. So even though there are only two items here, you still have to make it parallel. So the correct answer would be duties, colon, loyalty to family, no comma, and obedience to state. Obedience is parallel to loyalty. You only have two items here, so you don't need the comma, and then you need the colon after duties. Last question. Themes such as fate versus free will, redemption through suffering, and feeling conflicted between personal and political duty. Now, this one is a difficult one because of the such as, but what you have to ask yourself is this information essential to the meaning of the sentence? If it is essential, we do not need the comma. If it is not essential and the sentence means pretty much the same thing, then you do need the comma with it because it's not essential. So let's look at the entire context of the sentence. The plays explore themes. Okay, so let's just stop there. Does that sentence mean the same thing without all of the rest of this information? If it means the same thing, then it's non-essential and you need a comma. If the such as phrase adds important relevance to the sentence, then you don't need a comma because it's essential. So let's read the whole thing. The plays explore themes such as fate versus free will, redemption through suffering, and feeling conflicted between personal and political duty. So that actually provides some necessary context, not conflict, provides some necessary context. So it is essential. I would not use a comma here. However, if you do put a comma there, I can see why you would have put a comma there, but it's really essential to the meaning of the sentence, so I would not use a comma. The next thing that you should notice when you're reading through this is an items in a series, and there are three pieces of this puzzle. Fate versus free will is number one, redemption through suffering is number two, and feeling conflicted between personal and political duty is number three. So it's missing the comma right here after free will. So the correct answer would be themes such as fate versus free will, comma, redemption through suffering, comma, and the conflict between personal and political duty. Hopefully, that has helped clear up some of the confusion from the quiz. If you still have questions after this and you still don't understand, please let me know. You will have another quiz over these similar topics this Friday.